Welcome to Hot Spots on the United America Network. From the shifting landscapes of politics and culture to the urgent challenges facing our planet and our communities, this is where the conversations that matter most come alive. With her experience as a journalist, legislator, and activist, Kay Brown brings sharp insight, uplifting perspective, and unflinching courage to the issues shaping our future. Get ready for candid conversations, bold ideas, and the pushback our times demand. Now, here's Kay.
Hello, and welcome to Hot Spots. Today, we're going to chat about the implications of Trump's war on science and climate. And there are many ways that this war is being waged and playing out. The United States, historically the largest contributor to the world's greenhouse gas emission overload, has abandoned its role in international negotiations to reduce pollution and aid poor nations that are bearing the brunt of climate impacts. Essentially, the United States has just thrown away decades of climate change leadership and global collaboration with our allies. So I'm really pleased to welcome my guest today, Harvard University Professor John Holdren. Thank you so much, Professor Holdren, for being with me.
A pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Professor Holdren is a scientist who served as the senior advisor to President Barack Obama on science and technology issues. He was director of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy and co-chair of the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology. Professor Holdren is currently the Teresa and John Hines Research Professor at the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University and co-chair of the Science, Technology, and Public Policy Program at Harvard's Belfer Center for Science and International Affairs. Welcome again. Thanks for being here. And let's start with the overall status of the climate crisis. How would you characterize it? How close are we to so-called tipping points that will accelerate warming and trigger catastrophic events that are difficult to recover from?
Well, I would start by making it clear that science has established beyond any reasonable doubt that the climate is already changing in ways that cannot be explained by natural variability. It is proved beyond any reasonable doubt that the primary cause of those changes is the combustion of fossil fuel and the release of carbon dioxide, and also from fossil fuel operations and other sources, methane gas, both of which are the most powerful drivers of global climate change. And science has established, and the witness of our own eyes is establishing, that all around us, the impacts of these changes in climate are already visible. We're seeing more powerful heat waves, more powerful storms, longer droughts, more torrential downpours, more flooding, more wildfires. Anybody with eyes to see, looking around them or watching their screens, knows that the impacts of climate change worldwide are already here. The damage is already being done to economies, to ecosystems, to communities, to livelihoods, to infrastructure. The idea that climate change is something that only our children and grandchildren have to worry about is nonsense. In 1992, the world nations agreed at the Rio Conference on Environment and Development that the goal of human efforts to abate climate change should be to avoid dangerous disruption of global climate. And the fact is that goal is already dead. We are already experiencing dangerous disruption, and it is certain to get worse before it gets better because of the time lags that are built into the climate system and the time lags that are built into society's capacity to respond, to change our energy system, to change our consumption patterns, to change our living patterns in ways that would reduce the harm that's coming from the changes in climate that we can no longer avoid. All of that reality is being disputed by President Trump and those around him. President Trump claims that climate change is a hoax, where virtually every other nation in the world accepts it as reality and is participating in the global effort to reduce the pace of climate change and ultimately one hopes to reverse it. But as you noted, Kay, in your opening comments, the United States is now in the process of throwing away decades of leadership in this battle to limit and confine the harm that is coming from global climate change.
So why do you think Trump is doing this? I mean, is it just to promote more oil and gas? Why would he deny what seems to be the truth that scientists around the world are pretty much in agreement? I know there's a band of understanding about, what the future consequences may or may not be, but there seems to be a lot of unanimity that this is real, it's happening now. How can and why does he deny it, do you think?
Well, it's very hard to look into Trump's mind and to understand what could be motivating him. One thing that appears to be the case is that he is a great supporter of his friends in the fossil fuel industry, and he is trying to maintain the dominant role of coal, oil, and gas in the U.S. energy supply and in the world's energy supply. He is disparaging the potential of renewable energy sources. He seems to be tolerant of nuclear energy, which is another major way to reduce our dependence on fossil fuel. But he's absolutely opposed to wind. He's largely opposed to solar. And he appears to believe he's entitled to his own reality. It's not just on climate change, but on many different issues. The president is constantly telling the American people that food prices are going down when they're going up. He's constantly telling the American public that he is the world savior, stopping conflicts all around the world, that he deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. He really invents his own reality as he goes along, and he appears to be opposed to any activities or any priorities that he associates with the left side of the political spectrum in the United States. Anything that has been a priority for progressives in the United States, President Trump appears to want to oppose and is opposing. The other thing is he seems to have a strong aversion to the legitimacy of scientific facts. He's constantly disputing things that scientists agree on, constantly trying to reinvent the surrounding realities. And he not only is demonstrating that he does not understand or refuses to understand what science is telling us, but he's trying to reduce the opportunities of the society as a whole to understand what science is telling us. He's disparaging, undermining, and attacking universities. He is intimidating public and private media. He is trying to govern what universities can teach, what museums can display, what libraries can put on their shelves. He has taken down thousands of taxpayer-funded government websites displaying the results of taxpayer-funded research so that people can no longer find easily the scientific results that have been accumulated over decades, among other sources, by taxpayer funding. He has modified drastically, in many cases, the content of government websites across the many science-related agencies. He has drastically altered content that he hasn't entirely removed. He has stopped federal research projects in midstream and similarly stopped funding of university and independent research center research projects in midstream, even though Congress had appropriated the funding. So when you look at it with a broad brush, you see that it's not just climate change. It really is most of the sources of fact, of analytical opinion, of independent views are under fire in the Trump administration.
In addition to the research at universities, we've also seen these huge cuts to the federal agencies and dismantling the National Center for Atmospheric Research, the Environmental Protection Agency, the Forest Service, the Bureau of Land Management, and the Department of Interior. The people who manage our natural resources and work in these areas of regulating industry, reports indicate that thousands of employees have left their jobs, either been fired or taken buyouts, and that the whole infrastructure that our country has used to both protect and develop and regulate our natural resources has just been decimated. And what long range implications does that have when we've hollowed out our expertise like that?
Well, it's a great question. If you look at it carefully, you find that advances in science, technology, and innovation based on science and technology have been the most important driver of increases in U.S. well-being over the past 70 or 80 years. That is, most of the growth of our economy, most of the improvements in quality of life, most of the improvements in public health have been driven by scientific and technological advances. And those advances have been built by what you might call an innovation ecosystem that includes our primary education, our universities, our federal laboratories, our independent laboratories, our firms, big firms, small firms that use the results of research and development to develop new products that improve the quality of life. All of this is built on this system of innovation, which Trump has now been systematically dismantling. And that's what people really need to understand. This isn't just a matter of jobs for scientists and engineers. It is a matter of the primary sources of our prosperity, of our health, of our environmental quality, and our national security. All of that is at risk if the dismantling of this ecosystem of science, technology, and innovation that Trump has been undertaken is allowed to continue.
And looking at the international forums and attempts by countries around the world to collaborate under the United Nations, which of course Trump has withdrawn us from hundreds of UN agencies and treaties all across the board, not just in this arena. But I'm just wondering how much influence that is having, that the United States is no longer going to participate in the International Panel on Climate Change, the Paris Agreement, and, most recently the international, they call it the Framework Convention on Climate Change, which is the framework with all of its limitations. It's the tool that we are using to work with others around the world to try to limit the worst impacts of climate change. How much does it matter that the United States is not part of that any longer?
Well, we are doing tremendous damage to our standing in the world. The changes that Trump has wrought on our science, technology, and innovation system are damaging not just the United States, they're damaging everybody, in part because the world is interconnected, it's interdependent. And the rest of the world benefits when science and technology in the United States advance, and the rest of the world loses when those advances are undermined and brought to a halt. The standing of the United States in the world is based in part on our military strength. It's based in part on the strength of our economy. And it's based in very substantial part on our willingness to collaborate with other countries around the world in addressing the common problems that we all face. Those problems include climate change. They include pandemic disease. They include terrorism. They include a variety of issues. They include air and water pollution, the health of the oceans, the health of the atmosphere. And when the United States abdicates its role in helping the whole world address those problems, it loses its standing in the world. It loses its respectability. We are, in many countries around the world now, a laughingstock because our president insists that climate change is a hoax, that we have no responsibility to support the countries that are most in need in improving their public health and improving their economy. When President Trump, early in his administration, demolished USAID, he entrained literally millions of needless deaths around the world by cutting off the support for health and basic medical care among the world's neediest people. This is understood around the world. Trump, in one stroke, damaged the global effort to limit disease and illness, and in particularly in the poorest countries, in the neediest countries. That one stroke, all by itself, cost the United States a tremendous amount of international respect and credibility. And that, of course, is in addition to the physical damage, the loss of life and health that choice has entrained. There have recently been polls among our allies, our NATO allies in Europe, Canada, the UK, Denmark, France, Italy, Germany. Across all of our allies, the United States is now disapproved of far more than it's approved of. Our approval ratings used to be high across those countries. Now they're low. The United States is regarded as a bad actor in much of the world today, most of the world today. And the fact that we got there so quickly with such willful, malicious act by the Trump administration should be a cause not only for great sorrow, but great determination to find ways to bring these practices and policies to a halt and replace them with a much more sensible and cooperative approach, both to our own well-being and to the well-being of the world.
Do you think it's possible for other countries, states in the United States and local governments to make up for this United States backsliding and reneging on its climate commitments and, stopping all the funding for renewable development and so forth? Is it possible others will proceed on and get the problem under control regardless of what the United States is doing?
To an extent, yes. And it's worth remembering that in the first Trump administration, after Trump withdrew the first time from the Paris Climate Agreement, there emerged a movement in the United States initially called We're Still In, which ultimately included 25 of the 50 states, more than 500 city governments, more than 500 universities, more than 2,000 businesses, taking the position that Trump may be out of the Paris Agreement, but we're still in. All of these groups, all of these entities, all of these institutions pledged to do what they could to meet the commitments on climate change that President Obama made in Paris in 2015. And it was quite effective. It reduced, certainly, the damage that Trump was able to do in his first term to climate efforts in the United States and to clean energy efforts in the United States. And the other factor that was important was economic. Over the whole period, from the time that Trump was in office the first time up until the present, renewable energy sources have gotten less expensive, more competitive against the fossil fuels. And the market itself, even in the absence of the most sensible government policies, has considerably advanced the application of renewable energy, the application of energy efficiency, the development of adaptation measures to reduce the harm from changes in climate that we don't prevent. The trouble is, the second time around, Trump is much more influential than he was the first time. He no longer has the sensible people around him to try to rein in his more destructive influences. He surrounded himself completely by ideologues whose, I think, the principal criterion for their appointment was they were willing to swear that the 2020 election was stolen from President Trump. And if they passed that test, regardless of their other qualifications, they would be appointed. In addition, he has far more control of the Republicans in Congress than he had before. And the result is the Congress is not discharging its responsibility to rein in the president when he takes over congressional functions related, for example, to budgets and spending. The president has canceled many, many programs that the Congress authorized. It's something he cannot unilaterally do. And yet he has done it. And he has not been stopped by the Congress. It's different this time. There is still a movement, and includes many state governments, includes many city governments. It includes many universities. The degree to which the Trump administration has co-opted or intimidated many of the groups that were previously united in trying to compensate for Trump's retreat on climate change and clean energy has made it more difficult this time. The other thing that people need to recognize is that the damage that Trump is doing will not be very quickly remedied, even after he is out of office. When you break up research teams, when you decimate the technical talent in the government, when you stop research projects in midstream, it takes years to recover, to reassemble the research team, to start up the projects again, to compensate for the time that was lost. And so it's going to be a big challenge to compensate and to recover from the harm that Trump is doing. That doesn't mean we shouldn't try. We should be trying, starting right now, to limit the damage that Trump is able to do. And one of the ways that we need to do that, and many people are now pointing this out, is to protect the integrity of our elections in the United States. There's a very good chance that in the 2026 midterms this year in the United States, the composition of the Congress could change in a way which would lead the Congress to start reining Trump in. But there is very well-founded worry that Trump is trying to sabotage the chances of a fair 2026 election. And all of us in this country need to be alert to that danger and become engaged in protecting our democracy.
Well, I completely agree with that. And it is really important that we have a successful election in the midterms here coming up later this year. And I just wanted to ask you one other thing. Do you think that there's any legal reason that would prevent Trump from getting out of some of these treaties that have been approved by the Senate ratified treaties, such as the UN framework?
Yeah.
Can Trump just walk away from that? Or doesn't the fact that this has been already, approved by our government, does he have the authority to just ignore that and abandon those commitments?
Well, first of all, I have to say I'm not a lawyer, and it is my impression, however, and I listen to a lot of lawyers, that Trump has been running roughshod over the law. He's been running roughshod over the Constitution. Many of the things that he is doing and has done are either illegal or unconstitutional. There have been literally hundreds of court decisions against the actions that Trump has taken. Some of those court decisions have succeeded in bringing Trump's malicious actions to a halt, but not all of them. In many cases, Trump's approach is simply to appeal and appeal and appeal and assume it will ultimately get to the Supreme Court. And in the meantime, he goes on doing what he has been doing, which again, in many cases, in my judgment and the judgment of many others, has been illegal and unconstitutional. We have to hope that as some of the biggest issues get to the Supreme Court, that in spite of its composition, ultimately the Supreme Court will come down on behalf of our democracy, will come down on behalf and in defense of the Constitution. But again, in my view, the place we have to start, since we don't elect people to the Supreme Court and we do elect people to Congress, the place we have to start is with our elections. We need to protect them, and we need to do everything we can to elect people to Congress who will stand up for Congress's responsibility, including their control of the purse and including their capacity to agree on treaty, their capacity to create agencies and programs. Trump has felt free to demolish programs and even agencies that the Congress has created. He has felt free to walk away from treaties, and it's time to bring that to a stop. And the best way to do that I know of is our elections. And we better succeed in protecting the 2026 elections, and after that, the 2028 elections, or we're going to be much further down the road to losing the opportunity to protect our democracy.
Well, thank you so much, Professor Holdren, for sharing your thoughts and your insights and motivation and giving us motivation to participate in the elections coming up. It's so crucial. As you've said, climate change is a crisis. It's unfolding all around us, and much of the world is taking it seriously and working to avert the worst impacts working together collaboratively. Unfortunately, our federal leadership at the moment is not participating and is actually pulling things in the wrong direction. But hopefully, for the sake of a livable planet for future generations, that's going to be changing soon. So stay strong, keep resisting and persisting, get ready to show up and vote, and bring all your friends with you. Hope to see you next time on Hot Spots.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Hot Spots with Kay Brown, where tough issues meet thoughtful conversation. Stay engaged, stay inspired, and join us again as we spotlight the struggles, solutions, and stories that fuel resilience and change. Until next time, keep your fire burning. Hot Spots is a production of the United America Network and is available on most major podcast platforms, as well as from UnitedAmericaNetwork.com. This is what democracy sounds and looks like.